Hello guys, welcome back to NHL Rumor Roundup. My name is Nathan and this is the show where I discuss the biggest and latest NHL rumors that you guys need to hear about. Now with the NHL trade deadline pretty much just 3 weeks away, today I'm going to be detailing some of the biggest rumors around the NHL. Today featuring the Leafs, the Sens, the Habs, the Bruins, the Winnipeg Jets, and the San Jose Sharks. So what are the latest rumors right now in the trade market, and what trades could we potentially see leading up to the trade deadline? Watch till the end for all the rumors and opinions, and of course subscribe if you're new. Now first up in today's NHL Rumor Roundup, we're first going to talk about the Toronto Maple Leafs and some of the defensemen that they've been linked to in the last couple of days. Now Elliotte Friedman came out with a new 31 thoughts, and one of the first ones was about what Kyle Dubas will do in the next few weeks, and a huge tidbit too came from that, saying that the Toronto Maple Leafs have not just looked into Matthew Dumba, but are seriously interested. Now Elliotte Friedman in the 31 thoughts said this: they have looked into Minnesota's Matthew Dumba, who fits with Toronto. He has 3 years left remaining on his contract, and as one exec said, they are investigating every good defenseman on the market. And this isn't just a Matthew Dumba thing for me for Toronto, it's a whole NHL defenseman thing for the whole league. I think Toronto is looking at multiple different guys because they probably should be. Matthew Dumba, I'm not too sure would fix a lot of their problems. It just seems to me like another Tyson Barrie situation, which I don't think they really need on their team. To me, obviously, you'd want to go for the more defenseman, and I think that's what Toronto will go for, the more defenseman route. Again, I keep saying it, I think Brendan Dillon is a great fit for Toronto, but no, he's on San Jose, and he's automatically bad, even though, newsflash, he really hasn't been. I'm just saying, Kyle Dubas, if you want to go for that, I wouldn't complain whatsoever. But for Toronto, it's obvious that, again, the defenseman is what they're going for. We're not going to see another forward coming on Toronto. We're not going to see even a goaltender, maybe. I mean, Georgiev was the guy who was looked at, but it seems like right now, the defenseman is the priority for Toronto. And again, it does make sense. Even with Jake Muzzin coming back, there's a lot of improvements that need to be made on that D. And again, especially defensively, I think we can all agree on that department. And I think they could use a different guy. I don't think they're going to have to go over a guy like Pietrangelo to go far in the playoffs, but I definitely think they could use a guy who could strengthen that D in more ways than one. Another guy like Jake Muzzin who can provide some stability and some calmness that Toronto defense badly needs. But for Toronto, the two main guys that I personally would go for are obviously Brendan Dillon, who I already said, and if you could get a guy from Ottawa like Dylan DeMelo, I would not be mad at that whatsoever. But Toronto isn't just the only team that is looking for defense right now. It's been reported by TSN that the Winnipeg Jets are making defense and another center as their #1 priority. And kind of contradicting what I thought was going to happen just a week ago, it looks like the Winnipeg Jets will be looking for rentals and are looking to make the playoffs rather than selling off their pieces like I think they should be. And Darren Dreger also said on TSN that fixing that blue line remains Winnipeg's #1 priority. It looks like right now that Dustin Byfuglien is, by the day, being less and less likely to return, which I totally agree with, and that Winnipeg is looking for someone to fix some of those holes on D, which are 100% there. Earlier in the season, I think they got away with some of it, especially with Hellebuyck playing amazingly, but now that he's kind of coming back a little bit, the defense is really starting to show its holes. And I think for a team like Winnipeg, if they're going to make the playoffs, addressing that need is almost 100% a total must. And going back to Brendan Dillon from the San Jose Sharks, Pierre LeBrun went on TSN and said that the Winnipeg Jets might just be the best fit for him, and also for the speculation of what they might have to give up for him, it's looking like right now it will be a second-round pick plus a prospect on top of that. And for a team like Winnipeg, which badly needs not just defense, but defensive defense, a guy like Brendan Dillon I think could be a huge add for them, a veteran presence, and a guy who actually has experience on that blue line. Even their #1 guy in Joshua Morrissey doesn't really have that yet to the extent that a guy like Brendan Dillon would have. And I think Winnipeg, again, if they're serious at making the playoffs, has to do something now. They are countless points outside of the playoff spot right now, and everything they needed at this point, they're going to have to go get it. They're behind right now the Chicago Blackhawks by quite a few points, and that is never a good sign. For a team like that, defense, I think, is definitely a need. But to be honest, besides Connor Hellebuyck, a lot of that team is in need of fixing, whether it be in the depth on offense or the defense. A lot of it needs to be changed. Now, speaking of defensemen, we're now going to go to the Montreal Canadiens and what they plan to do at this deadline. And for the Montreal Canadiens, they're a team that has been wide open. They could be a buyer or a seller, whatever they want to be. But it's obvious that they won't be making the playoffs this season. But in Elliotte Friedman's new 31 thoughts, he ended up saying that Montreal wants to make the playoffs next season, and they want to keep the guys that will help them next season. That being Jeff Petrie and, of course, Tomas Tatar. Now, that also means that Ilya Kovalchuk will likely be gone at this trade deadline, but guys like Jeff Petrie and Tomas Tatar, which I initially thought were going to be traded, might not be in the next month. And Elliotte Friedman also goes on to say that they could trade Tomas Tatar or Jeff Petrie, but the offers would have to blow their socks away and be absolutely amazing for that to end up happening, which I really don't see, as there's some good other options on the trade deadline at this point. Montreal is a team, though, that honestly is sometimes really confusing, but if they want to make the playoffs next season, then it does make sense to keep those two guys. Those are core part of the teams. They will be free agents next season, and even if Montreal does end up failing, then they're rentals next season and can be traded away. I think it does make sense with that mindset, and for a team like Montreal, a team who I thought would sell a ton of assets, that might not be the case completely this year. But that doesn't mean we'll see a shortage of action, because another Canadian team, the Ottawa Senators, have pretty much made it their mission to be as much of a seller as humanly possible. Right now, it's still up in the air if they'll end up re-signing Jean-Gabriel Pageau, but right now a trade is the most likely thing to happen at this point. Pierre LeBrun ended up saying, though, on TSN, there are quite a few teams that are specifically interested in him. Starting out with the Calgary Flames, the Edmonton Oilers, the New York Islanders, the Philadelphia Flyers, and the team that needs a center, being the Winnipeg Jets. Now, the asking price for Pageau is also pretty interesting. It's been reported that the asking price to start out will be a second-round pick and a great prospect, which I personally don't believe. I think at the very least, Ottawa will want a conditional first-round pick, if not just a normal first-round pick for Pageau, because just having 3 first-round picks of their own, San Jose, and then another team, I think would be just too good to pass up. But for Pageau, again, I don't see him getting less than at least a conditional first. To be honest, Pageau is clearly the best center in the market right now, and I don't think it's even close either. He's a guy that could be a great second liner on a good playoff team, and I think can provide a lot of value on both offense and D. He's a guy that I think for a team going into the playoffs that needs an extra center, my team, the Dallas Stars, I think I would go all over Pageau if I had the chance, and I'd be all over him. He's a guy that, again, will have a lot of asking price, obviously. He'll have to be paid a lot of dollar, especially in the free agency, but that's a guy that for rental, I'm not sure if I'd want anybody else, especially center-wise. Now, Elliotte Friedman also in this 31 thoughts had a lot to say about Dylan DeMelo for the Sens, and he's a guy that I think has had a great year with Ottawa, all things considered. On a pretty bad Ottawa team, he's been actually pretty good. And I think for any defenseman on the market, you could likely get DeMelo for a pretty cheap price. But Elliotte Friedman goes on to say that his 2019-20 has not gone unnoticed, and that there will be a lot of interest surrounding him at the trade deadline. So I don't think he'll come as cheap as I initially thought, which sucks because I personally wanted him on a team like Dallas. But either way, he's a guy that I think will get a lot of interest and get a lot of attention too. There isn't too many amazing rental defensemen. There's some guys out there that have some term on them, like Jeff Petrie, like a Matthew Dumba, but not a lot of guys who will be free agents after this year. But DeMelo is a guy who has relatively good experience, who's relatively young, and having his best season so far in the NHL. Now, our last rumor here today that I'm going to talk about surrounds David Backes and the Boston Bruins. And give me a second, just have to scratch my nose. I'm not doing another take of this, so just stand by for a second. It surrounds David Backes and him in the AHL. Now, David Backes just a couple weeks ago was sent down to Providence Bruins of the AHL from the Boston Bruins, obviously, and that was a pretty big deal. His cap hit goes back to the AHL and is still with the Boston Bruins. But the Boston Bruins and Don Sweeney had a statement here today to make about the whole situation and how they're going to handle it. He said this: "After speaking with David, we have agreed that it is the best interest of David and the Bruins for him not to play in Providence at this time. David is fit and able to play, but in order to preserve all potential options for both David and the Bruins moving forward, we have decided this is the best course of action." Now, when I initially saw this statement, I'm like, okay, this is nothing. I mean, sure, whatever, he's not playing in Providence. But the more and more I look at this statement, the more and more I think it's alluding to a potential David Backes trade. Especially the part where he says, but in order to preserve all potential options for David and the Bruins moving forward, we have decided that this is the best course of action. All potential options. Obviously, I think the Boston Bruins would want to trade him at this point rather than sending him to the AHL. But for a team who has a bunch of cap space, would want to take a contract like that on, I don't know. We saw the Anaheim Ducks, who are rumored to be a team to take on big contracts just a couple of weeks ago. I think a fit might just be there, and David Backes, I think, could find a new home relatively soon. But it just depends what the team interest is out there for him, because I don't think the Boston Bruins obviously want him on their team. He's now with the AHL Providence, and of course not even playing there, but I think a trade is what is signaled at this point. Again, I'm not sure if there's going to be too much interest out there, but for a team who wants to get some picks back, get some prospects potentially, and take on a big contract from a team like the Boston Bruins, again, I think a team like Anaheim could be in that race. We saw how Arizona's done that in the past. There are teams that I think could potentially pull that off, and I don't think the Boston Bruins are in the void here. Even though teams have unsuccessfully tried to do it, like Louis Eriksson in the past, I think a trade might just happen. Again, especially if Boston is willing to give up picks and potentially prospects too. But that'll be it for today, guys. If you guys enjoyed this video, make sure you hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and hit that notification bell if you haven't already. Comment down below your thoughts on all the rumors discussed today, what you think of them, and also which players you think will be traded in the next few weeks. Share this video with your friends, boys. Get the rumors out there as well. And also, click this card right here to watch all of my trade rumor videos. My name is Nathan, and I'll see you on the next video or stream. Goodbye.